All right. We live, people. We live. Black Eyes TV in the house once again. Building with two powerful brothers, but leading the charge today. Yeah. With the title of The Purpose of Being Conscious. Theory and practical is our brother SANKOFA. Speak to the people, my brother. Let them know what's good, who you are, what you do. It's been a hot second.
First and foremost, I want to thank you, Brother Rich, for opening up your platform for me to allow me to come on and not only network with you, but to build for the purpose of edifying the people. That means a lot because I take the cause of mental liberation of the minds of our people, which is critically necessary. I take this serious. I don't look at this as something I just do for a hobby. This is a lifetime commitment, and this is a job that I'm committed to, and to the death of me, to the wheels fall off. So for you to extend your platform to open invitation for Brother SANKOFA to come on here representing the House of Consciousness, I think that is I thank you for that, and I want to do this topic matter that we deal with some justice today. Today's topic, in which we're going to delve into, is dealing with consciousness, the purpose of consciousness, the purpose of being conscious. What is conscious? What are the different types of conscious? What conscious or type of conscious thought or awareness is relevant and pertinent and critical for Black people and what we need? Okay. Also, I would be remiss to not give a shout out to my brother George Macon, who is also in the building tonight. A brother who I find very intelligent, strong, consistent, committed, and he always has some very powerful points of ponderance to bring to the table of dialogue. And to be on here, I think this is my first time too, and this is on Black Ice. Let that be noted. This is our first time ever really, well, our second time. Our first time in 2018. All right, first time was Baba TV up in Harlem. So this is our first time really engaging in a formal dialogue. We'll say that, a formal dialogue, and it is on Black Ice TV 7. You know what I'm saying, people out there? So definitely, if you're not subscribed to Black Ice TV 7, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you support our brother. All right. So going basically in, our brother George, before I go in, did you want to say anything? Shout out to people and give yourself an introduction. Introduce yourself to the people.
Yeah, no, I'm just honored to have you here with us, man. They know me. let's get it.
Okay, well, I'm honored that you're honored to have me here with you. So let's call it a double honor. Yes. So Brother SANKOFA, I mean, I'm not always in front of the camera as of late, and that's due to different reasons. And those different reasons are very constructive oriented reasons. I'm embarking on a journey of spiritual evolution and mental empowerment. Basically, I'm stepping myself up. I want to be able to bring before you a better and a greater and a stronger and a more intelligent and a more refined SANKOFA than you've seen previously, because I believe that the whole purpose and functionality of this knowledge, in the words of my master teacher, and yours too, if you know better, but my master teacher, who I acknowledge as my master teacher, Dr. Amos Wilson, the whole purpose and functionality of acquiring this information is for advancement. All right. So when you see a person applying what it is that they're taking in, that they call consciousness, and being proactive with that which they're aware of or what they're conscious of, changes are come about. So, me, age 44, you know what I'm saying? Working out and stronger than I've ever been in my life. I'm more fit. I believe that I'm more sharper mentally, intelligently, than I've ever been. And I don't say that in any vain kind of way. I say it with strength, yes, but I also say it with dignity, passion, and humility, because the whole purpose and functionality of obtaining information is to advance with it. Sometimes we got to step from in front of the camera and do things, you know what I'm saying, to enhance, to empower ourselves, to evolve ourselves so that we can be a better soldier leading the charge for the liberation of the minds of our people. All right. Now, dealing with consciousness, I believe consciousness, and I think we can agree, is a general term. When we say conscious or consciousness or to be conscious, that is a general term, for lack of a better term, you know. But when we go into what consciousness is, I believe every human being is conscious. So when we say conscious, we have to add some content to what we mean by consciousness. We got to put a point of relevance or purpose to the kind of consciousness that we are talking about when we are people who are advocates of Black advancement or liberation, you know what I'm saying? Or we are those who talk about waking up, us woke folk, so to speak. And the difference between consciousness, because you have engineered human consciousness, Thule Society, you know what I'm saying? And other institutions that deal with mind control of the masses, which is called mono-idealism, or mass control of thought, which is dealing with people's or manipulating people's consciousness. Whether people are conscious of what they're doing and it's wrong and they don't give a damn, or they're just ignorant to it, or whether people are conscious of what they're doing and it's intentionally right, all right, that is still conscious, you know. My whole point is examining what kind of consciousness are we talking about when we say consciousness amongst the so-called woke folk or conscious community folk, because we have been dubbed the conscious community, even though I have my little gripe with the term conscious community, because I don't see a community. I do see conscious networks, and I do see conscious people that engage or network. I see conscious cliques. I see conscious groups. I wouldn't say I really see a conscious community. You know, us examining a different kind of consciousness than the word consciousness itself, which means to be aware and to respond to your environment with that awareness, that is very vague, and it's not specific. So when we say consciousness, we are talking about a level of awareness or knowledge that will offset or cause a transition in the mind or the psychology of those whose consciousness has been compromised through cultural colonialism, through spiritual enslavement, okay, and through being brainwashed and being products of this conditioning, which has affected our consciousness, our awareness, our state of mind being, how we see ourselves, how we see the world around us, and how we see our collective worldview, all right, has been distorted, has been manipulated, and has been colonialized. So we say aware because aware means to know, all right? Now, our consciousness that we exhibit is slave consciousness, is products of cultural colonialism consciousness, that through our actions, our ways, our deeds, our dialogue, how we engage with each other, that kind of consciousness that we exhibit, we see a defective type of consciousness. We see a poison in our consciousness. We see something wrong in that kind of consciousness. We say conscious to broaden the scope of just consciousness being aware, but a specific kind of awareness, an awareness that is geared specifically towards an education that will break the shackles that is on your mind that is causing you to have the colonial consciousness that we have. You know what I'm saying? Contemporarily speaking, you know what I'm saying? I call it colonial consciousness. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Because we're modern day slaves now. There's a brother, shout out to my brother Ajay Tiemba, from the Harlem Liberation University in Harlem, okay? Shout out to that brother, because he broke down something that I find very profound, very critically true and pertinent to when we talk about consciousness or a conscious community, or what consciousness is, to put it in a better perspective and to categorically break down what consciousness is, because there are many different schools of thought that make up consciousness. There are many different types of people or characters in consciousness. You know, let me say that the Nation of Islam, they may not be referred to as the conscious community. A lot of times people refer to people that represent the RBG side of things, or Garvey, or that type of things, or even a social media channel platform. They'll refer to a channel as the conscious community.
Yeah.
Instead of a medium, you know what I'm saying, that conveys information to the conscious collective. You know what I mean? We refer to those as conscious communities, and we paint a big picture with a small brush of understanding. All right. And we don't categorically put things in their perspective. So you have some people who hate the word consciousness, or who subside. Maybe they don't hate it, but they subside from being called conscious because they feel as though consciousness has been painted with a negative brush. And if it has been painted by a negative brush, it's because we take word semantics, we add life to them, and then we forget about the essence and the purpose of what these words, right, were supposed to mean in its essence, because we get caught up in wordplay instead of the proactiveness that was supposed to be at what it's supposed to mean. Consciousness is supposed to be something that gives you awareness that affects how you respond, action word, to the environment around you. Back to my brother Ajay Tiemba from the Harlem Liberation School. He broke down, and you should definitely subscribe to his channel, people. What is it called again? I believe it's called, subscribe to Black Liberation University on YouTube. Black Liberation University, okay? And he broke down the different 6 types of different conscious people, all right? You have conscious soldiers, you know, the brothers who are stand-up, who are vanguard. I look at myself as a conscious soldier. You know, they're connected to a lot of people in the community. They know a lot of information. They're your go-to people. He broke down how you have conscious cliques, conscious cynics. You have the conscious grandstander. You have conscious cheerleaders. And then you also have what he referred to as conscious sophomores. So with the conscious cliques, I named the conscious soldiers, your stand-up, your revolutionary, your vanguard, you know, that your go-to person, very well studied and very committed to proactiveness. He is not just conscious in theory. The conscious soldier is boots on the ground, proactive, engaging, not disengaged from the people, and just his consciousness is theoretical and breaking down the science of the stars, the metaphysics, and the quasars. But this is a person who is more proactive and more interacting on the ground, or a frontliner for the cause of the people. You have your cliques, which deals with your cult types. You know what I'm saying? Who are isolated from a lot of the rest of the people. They isolate themselves. They're very cliquish. If you're not with their circle, they don't really rock with you like that. You have your conscious cynics, who are people who assume the worst about everything and everybody. They're very cynical. They're very apathetic, very negative in their perspective. Anytime we have a build upon something we can do to advance our economic or academic status, you know, those are the type that will show up at the meeting, RBG'd, unked up sometimes, or maybe not, regular hoodie and Timbs. You know, we come in many shapes, forms, and fashions. But however, one thing that you do notice that is always consistent with these types is that when you talk about something negative, they're the type who try to find the fault in what you said. Not to say that anything is above critique, because it damn sure isn't. And we won't advance without critiquing things to come to the conclusion of what is best for us, or what things, plural, because we don't just need one thing. We got a lot of issues, so we need a lot of things. But these people in their apathy and their cynicalism, right, the cynics of the conscious community, tend to ask questions with the intention of disagreeing with whatever is on the other side of that question or the answer. You have the conscious grandstander, you know, those who are obsessed with, you know, being seen or heard for credit. Those who do things, but it's really not for the best interest of the collective. A lot of times they do things because that soundbite or that photo op or that video op will put them in a situation, right, whereas they can gain some vainglory or take some credit for what appeared to be a great noble cause that wasn't supposed to be, you know, for the benefit of any individual. A lot of these people make sure they go above and beyond to always be seen, always be heard, always chime in. Sometimes they become trollers by proxy of being such goddamn grandstanders. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Then you also have the sophomores of the conscious community, 6 type of conscious type of personalities or people that exist in the community is what we're discussing, right? So you have the sophomores who tend to be maybe relatively younger, you know, younger in the knowledge is what I'm talking about, not just young per se in age, but younger in the knowledge. But they get it in this overzealous zeal to almost kind of like a grandstander, you know what I'm saying? And this overzealous zeal, you know, they want to debate everybody. They know everything. You know what I'm saying? Now with YouTube and social media, a lot of people who are understudied or underqualified, yeah, there should be qualifications to things when you take things serious. That's right, because social media has given people the ability to exhibit themselves and convey their feelings, right? You have a lot of people who are crazy as hell, and then a lot of people with potential who may not be crazy, but they're in their sophomore thing and they know it all. You can't tell them nothing. They want to battle everything. You know what I'm saying? You have those. Then you have your conscious cheerleaders, those who are impressionable, easy to be led, meaning whoever is hot on getting the views, that's who they're behind. They're going to rock behind whoever's popular in the social media conscious community, really, because that's where the entertainment is that generates the conscious cheerleader mentality. You have a lot of them that will go to events not because they are interested in the information of how they can use it to further progress our causes and our plights, but they will go there really just to see the person that's speaking so they can agree with them and disagree with anybody who is in opposition to their message. You know what I'm saying? A lot of them are not proactive themselves. They're easily misled. Oh, that's what I call it, misled or easily led. Sometimes people are cheerleaders of people who are not demagogues or charlatans. You don't always have to follow a demagogue and a charlatan to be a cheerleader. You can follow that good sister or that good brother or that good organization. Follow them, but not walk with them. Follow them, heard what I said, but not walk with them or not support them in ways that is critically necessary that will advance the cause outside of just following them. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people show up to these events, some sisters who might be attracted to certain brothers because of the way in which they convey their vernacular is so spectacular that, you know, they're turned on. And knowledge is power, and I get it. And women are attracted to power. Knowledge is a form of power that has an attractiveness to it. But when I talk about the cheerleader, I mean those who aren't really proactively involved in anything, but they are just people who are on some side. So if you critique somebody for, say, there's some grievances that the community have with them, maybe for stealing, maybe for bad services and dealing with, you know, the products that they're promoting or selling, you know, and then somebody has a critique for them, you have the conscious cheerleaders might even appear like trolls on you and critique you for having the audacity to critique somebody who needs to be critiqued. Sometimes you have conscious cheerleaders who, instead of supporting in a way which is beneficial to a movement, they're not going to support. And it might be like they're not following a demagogue or a charlatan, like I said. It might be a good person or movement or objective or an agenda that is definitely worthwhile. But instead of supporting it, they will only play cheerleader or sideline person that cheers on who's popular or who's being recognized right now. So usually the conscious cheerleader has something for the conscious grandstander. The conscious cynic becomes the conscious clique because, you know what I'm saying? A lot of times they are very isolated from other people. That's what cynical people do. You know what I'm saying? And then you have your sophomores, you know what I mean, who are new into consciousness, but they know it all and they want to debate everybody and don't realize that knowledge, and you can have knowledge, but wisdom and understanding come through trial, through error, through evolution comes in these things, and you learn and you develop a certain mindset, a certain character set. Yes, even disappointment, even being wrong about the things that you thought were right at one point is some of the journey in the path of consciousness for those who are really evolving in consciousness, learning some things, then realizing, well, maybe I didn't have my facts right, or learning some things and learning, well, it's more to it than I thought, or learning some things, oh, we know we got to take this completely off the table. These are the things that you go through in your journey, in your path of consciousness or awareness or learning that develop you through beyond being a sophomore into becoming a soldier one day. So we've covered the different characteristics of consciousness in the conscious community. The need for consciousness is to offset and to reverse colonial consciousness and the shackles that are still prevalent, that are on our minds, and that you see exhibited through how we act towards each other and the way we act before the world. And, you know, don't feel, you know, if you feel the need to jump in or chime in, my brother, George Making, on this topic, you know what I'm saying? I definitely appreciate your build and your perspective, because you always bring something intelligent to the table.
Yeah, I'll start it off with this before I even speak. I'll read something real quick.
Yes, sir.
Black consciousness is in essence the realization by the Black man of the need to rally together with his brothers around the cause of their oppression, the blackness of their skin, and to operate as a group in order to rid themselves of the shackles that bind them to the perpetual servitude. It seeks to demonstrate the lie that Black is an abbreviation from the normal, which is white. It is a manifestation of a new realization that by seeking to run away from themselves and to emulate the white man, Blacks are insulting the intelligence of whoever created them Black. Black consciousness therefore takes cognizance of the deliberateness of God's plan in creating Black people Black. It seeks to infuse the Black community with a newfound pride in themselves, their efforts, their values, their cultures, their religion, and their outlook on life. That's Black consciousness by Steve Biko.
Wow.
I'll say this: to be Black conscious in a white nationalist society is to be radical, because it would be impossible to be Black, so-called Black conscious within this society when we speak English and have European names. So to begin to ask questions outside of the norm that you've been conditioned to follow, that will automatically make you radical. That's right. That will automatically make you stick out like a sore thumb. So just the idea of Black consciousness, when you look at us in the last 100 years, the majority of groups that was either Black, because to have Black consciousness automatically segues into Black nationalism, because you can't have Black consciousness without Black nationalism. So to have Black consciousness in America has shown you its violence, its vitriol, its war against anything of Black nationalism or Black consciousness that goes against the status quo. We've seen what happened to the Black Panthers. We've seen what happened to the Black Liberation Army. We've seen what happened to how the Nation of Islam was infiltrated and divided and broken up into different groups. Right. We've seen what happened to Garvey. We've seen even the move demonstration in the 70s and the 80s. Any forward progress of any thought of a Black consciousness, war was declared on it.
That's right.
So what you see today is not really Black consciousness. It's trying to get Black understanding. To me, this is not Black consciousness. There's really no conscious community, because what is the agenda of the conscious community? What is the agenda planning? What are the roles? I think it's more Black understanding. In my humble opinion, I think Black power and Black consciousness has been destroyed, and it has to be recreated by a new consciousness of younger people moving forward today, learning from the mistakes that was made by the ancestors before us. I think that they laid down a great template on how we should move. They created movements without social media. They was able to get global movements without cell phones. So they already showed us that it can be done. And now we live in a world where you could be everywhere at one time. We have the ability to reach further than what the ancestors did, but we have to have an agenda. We have to do what Steve Biko said. We have to understand that being black is not a mistake. We have to try to deprogram our minds from the system, this system that's in front of us that we begin to normalize. I have a saying that I always say, SANKOFA, before we can fix ourselves, we have to realize that we are already interracially married to this system.
I like that. I like the way you put that.
Yeah, and I say, because people get mad when they say, "Oh man, this brother with a white girl, this sister with a white man." I'm like, dude, we integrated. Well, integrated, brother. First, forget integration. Before integration, we was interracially married to the system. Before you can even think to integrate, you have to already within your mind find out, saying yourself that it will be okay to do it. Other than that, you would rather die than be integrated into something that's burning. So I tell people all the time, we have to divorce the system. And that's a hard thing to do. And you cannot be black power, have black consciousness or any type of black nationalism as long as we're interracially married within the system, because the system is what provides services for you. And until we are independent of these services, you're not going to really have any type of black, to me, black power. And by me studying the ancestors, I realized that, you know, we're the only group in the world that after our oppression or after our captivity, we sought integration and education from our oppressors instead of seeking to eradicate them or get away. We sought.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we saw it. Now, don't get me wrong. I'll say this: we didn't just seek it right away, because I understand Field Order 15 and how we was resisting, we were fighting, but because we lost so many different wars, they destroyed our cities. They cut off our ways of surviving and feeding ourselves and our children in the historical accounts. And then groups of us began to seek integration and education from our oppressors. Go ahead, bro.
Yeah, I wanted to add on to that too, because what you said, you spoke a lot of fire, a lot of truth. That's why the whole premise of pan-Africanism is what I stand on, because we're only 14% of a population here in America, bro. We're only 14%, and out of that 14%, the people who are aware, you call it black awareness, I call it black power, if you understand what I mean by power. You know, knowledge is power. You know what I'm saying? There is power in breaking shackles, and it first starts with evolving the mind. That's first. You know, that's a powerful thing to be able to get to that or past that point. You see what I'm saying? But see what Pan-African attempts to do, and even why the Brzezinski memorandum, you know what I'm saying, sought to stop, you know what I'm saying, and hinder a Pan-African united front between blacks in the diaspora, but blacks in America with blacks in Africa. The reason why they did that, because they know more than we know about our own selves, the power of our own being, which is unfortunate to some extent. You know what I'm saying? But they know that economically, politically, you know what I'm saying, and otherwise, those two pillars right there are powerful, that can carry into many other great things and pertaining to nation building. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the Brzezinski memorandum and how it was put out, and to stop black people from Africa from unifying politically and economically with blacks over here. Because a lot of times what we do is we paint, like I said, big pictures with one brushes, and we always say we, as if we all did something at the same time, and that's not how it happened. We don't want to oversimplify how we came to where we're at now without considering all the different hills and valleys that we went through, and pitfalls and traps and snares that were aligned to bring us to where we're at. There is accountability. There is accountability that we must have as well within much of the condition that we are still in. However, I would believe that there are many conscious communities that some people do have the right, because I'm not going to say we, because I don't operate off of the same level as everybody else. I know groups. Now, we are not unified, I would say that, but to say that nobody is trying to do any real work and we're just still at the level of just being aware, I'm not sure I can agree with that, knowing that I've been a part of and on the ground with people who are doing that. Now, we don't have the support of the greater community behind us or the populace of Black people behind us. We can say that, but to say that nobody's really doing anything and it's just Black thought at this point, we're beyond Black thought, a lot of people. I want to give a shout out to Shotokan Bando Dynamic University out in New Haven, Connecticut, under Professor George Rumsey, the Budokan style of martial arts that they exhibit, because not only is that an institute in the community for martial arts, it is also an institution in the community for education, for art, for excuse my words, for gang bang intervention. You see what I'm saying? They're doing a lot of things and outreach, food and clothes drives, backpacks and school utensil giveaways. And some people like it starts on that level because it starts on a community level. We have to show that we can have and maintain institutions and that we can use that institution to be a real powerful source of outreach and consistent outreach to the community. We have that. Shout out to New Era, the New Era movement, the New Era Detroits, the New Era Atlantas. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to the new Black Panther Party, those who are seriously active, because they splitting up into different sects and all that too. But I believe that there are people who are very intelligent, very articulate, who know what's going on, and who do have boots on the ground, who are doing things. The thing we don't have is a collective national mission objective. Wow. Us as a people, because we don't have a collective identity, right? We have groups and we have cliques. That's why I was even in the beginning, I did agree with you, my brother, George Macon. I said, well, there is no conscious community if you understand what the word community means. And even that the word unity is in community. The word unity is in there. There is no community because there is there's no collective objective, right? And there is no premise, and that there's a common thread that we are all unified based on, even within our ideological differences. You know what I mean? I believe that sometimes a brother teaching is revolutionary and is proactive. Not everybody on there, but let me explain why. I meet people a lot of times in my journey who tell me that because them watching not just our channel, Black News 102, House of Consciousness, you know what I'm saying? Not just Black Ice 7, you know what I'm saying? Not just hearing the different teachers with a plethora of information on different things, but because they tuned into these channels, some of them have told me that they got their stuff together, went back to school, wanted to start to pursue education so they can become something and be basically a spoke in the wheel for the change that's needed amongst us as a people. I've met people who said by tuning into our channels, when they was gangbanging and they was in the streets, that made them fall back and subside from that lifestyle because they were inspired, understanding the psychological damage that is being done to our people and how it is perpetuated through television, through mass media promotion of certain ideas, images, and concepts, by billboards, by music. There's so many different ways that the mind is being controlled, that is being socially engineered, that for people to have things like this, even though it doesn't stop at teaching, this in this time, right? By us using technology, sound, color, motion, with the power of our words and our minds to convey messages, is helping to inspire change. We are planting seeds that we're not even aware that we're planting. And that's good, but it doesn't stop there, because what we don't have, right? We've never had a referendum, you know what I'm saying, or plebiscite to really determine what it is that we ought to be as a collective, and then move as a collective unit, which interprets into group economics, block voting, and institutions that benefit us as a collective instead of a theoretical conscious community. So I do agree with you but I do also want to give credit to the people that are out there, and many of them are not on YouTube. There is a whole movement going on out there, and everything's not on YouTube.
Sankofa, let me just take a moment, because this has been a good start to the show. I'm feeling it for all those that don't know. And I'm going to come back to you as well, George, so you can ask your question as well. Again, anyone who doesn't know, Brother Sankofa, the purpose of being consciousness, the purpose of being conscious, should I say, theory and practical. That's what we're talking about today. Again, I want to say shout out to the chat room. Yeah, everybody that's supporting. Hampton, Taylor, Bullies, Nine Fire, Cosmic Thought. Yeah, shout out to everybody. Shout out to Sci-Fi up in the chat.
Sci-Fi, shout out.
Soul, Bong, all of you supporting the play. Big up. But I want to go back to something we was talking about, the social media side, because I know we're locked right now in a zone where social media is the thing, where we are sharing these thoughts, and this seed of black consciousness that we're talking about, this black movement that we're talking about, is played out a lot in social media. But one of the things I always think is that social media, it dissipates the natural energy that should be hitting the streets when it comes to frontline movement. Because now we're in a situation where people can see something happening in the world, in their community, on the front line, and now they're encouraged to click, share, and they do that, and they feel like they've done their part. They feel like they've amplified that form of conscious thought or awareness, as we're saying in the general terms, of the situation at hand. But for me, I look at it like it's a perfect way of, as I said, dissipating that natural energy and conscious thought, collective conscious thought, that should be turning into, as we said, practicals when it hits the street. What's your take on that, Sankofa? And then George, when he's done, you come in and ask what you wanted to ask, and give your opinion on the same question, please, brother.
Okay, and I'm gonna try to just cut to the point, to the chase, and be brief and make it plain, like Malcolm X would always say, make it plain. Now, like I said, theoretical is consciousness and theory, knowing what happened, knowing why it happened, how it happened, where it happened, who are the people behind it, who are the culprits, who are the victims. Okay, knowing that is one thing. Knowing history, how great our history was. You know what I'm saying? Pre-colonial Africa. You know what I'm saying? Knowing how pre-dynastic Kemet was. Dynastic Kemet was. Knowing about our great history all throughout the world. And stopping there is not bringing our greatness back. So that's why I'm saying consciousness in theory is one thing. The whole purpose of us getting this consciousness was to spark a psychological empowerment in us that would move us to want to transcend from our status and our condition, socio-politically, economically, psychologically, psychospiritually, and otherwise speaking. So Dr. Joseph Carruthers said that we are battling intellectual warfare. He said that we're battling on a level of intellectual warfare. See, warfare is multidimensional. Part of the warfare that we're facing, or that we're dealing with, and that we have been dealing with, I think, which is one of the more critically important components of warfare that we have to consider, is the psychological or the mental dynamic of warfare. Thus, there is a need for a theoretical or consciousness, you know what I'm saying, to break shackles, to educate us, to inform us with the intent of empowering us with that information. However, we fall short of the glory when we just stay people who are, like you called it, my brother Rich, soulless scholarship. You're right. Deep for the sake of being deep and parroting and quoting quotes. And it can become mental masturbation once we stop at just building and knowing how great we are or how great we were, opposed to basically developing solution-oriented consciousness. What a solution-oriented consciousness would do would take more critical thinking, because you would have to know how to not just know knowledge, but know how knowledge has to be implemented in a proactive way, in a way that is applicable, that is applicable to the critical change that we articulate that we need. You see what I'm saying? When I was in the new Black Panther Party, one thing I did like about that is not only did we have the political education classes, not only did we delve into history, because we dealt with a plethora of different teachers from a Black nationalist or African-centered perspective, which deals with a broad range and scope and different narratives of a plethora of information. But what made us what we were and distinguished that group, and not just saying that group, the other groups that are the like, but this is just where I was at with it, is that we did things on the ground. We engaged with the gang members. I mean, I helped to write letters to the mayor when I was in the Jersey chapter in Trenton, Mayor Doug Palmer at the time. You know what I'm saying? To help get the license to be able to hold a summer of peace unities. You know what I'm saying? In the city of Trenton, when they was out there slaughtering each other. It wasn't easy. We had to go out on the blocks late night, not in this daytime when it was safe and cool. But you know what I'm saying? This is stuff that you don't catch on YouTube. You know what I'm saying? Late night on the blocks, in the alleys, you know what I'm saying? And the clubs let out and interact with the people, pass out flyers, give them information. I was a brother, anybody can tell you that was respected highly and known for doing that, because I was committed to leading the charge in doing that and really waking up our people. I was, you know what I'm saying, doing things where you're engaging with the people or even learning more knowledge, because it doesn't start with boots on the ground and passing out backpacks and doing gang interventions either. There's a lot more that needs to be done. But the non-sensational side of things is a lot of what doesn't get covered and what a lot of people don't see and don't consider, because they look at the sensational side or the theoretical side through social media of the social media conscious community. And I think a lot of times they feel to maybe through what I want to call it, innocent ignorance. Maybe they really didn't know that there are people out there, that there are movements and organizations out there, that there are schools out there like the Harlem Liberation School right in Harlem. You don't really see too much coverage of that on any of the media platforms, who are doing things because they're dealing with the minds of our children, who Brother George Macon said are the ones that we have to raise up to bring about the change that we articulate and that we theorize about. The material change that we want to see is going to be made manifest through our children. And when we say black power means a lot of different things. Consciousness means a lot of different things. It is a psychological call to manhood. It is a psychological call to manhood. And the whole point and premise of black power and saying that was an attempt to compensate for our damaged condition in this material reality. But the fact of the matter is this too. There is a level where consciousness is benefit, is necessary, and is critical, because you can't transitionalize or change the mind state of a people or change the condition of a people, without first changing the mind state. Okay? That's what, you know, the whole purpose of African-centered knowledge is geared towards this. You know what I'm saying? The whole purpose of African-centered knowledge is to say that consciousness precedes any material or physical, tangible change that's needed. But we can't stop there. A lot of us stop at consciousness and we forget about things that are needed to go further to bring about the material change that we talk about that we need. The whole purpose of this African-centered consciousness, right, is to spark the mind in order to prepare people for the next level, which is proactiveness. What's your thoughts and your take on that, Brother George?
Well, I think you're right in your assessments. I'll say this. When I look at social media is a gift and a curse. Especially, and I think that for people like our age, that's like 40 and over, that lived in an era where we were still grown when we or teenagers, when there was no social media, there was no cell phones. We was more proactive on the ground. We was actually doing things like you had to go look a man in the eye and shake his hand, and there was no fronting and faking. You had to show and prove. Like you had you had to show your works, you know, in the physical. Like you didn't have to sit behind the keyboard and become a star where people begin to follow you, but you literally sitting in your drawers behind the keyboard, but they only see the shirt and the glasses you got on. You know what I mean? You know, you know, and you got a following. You got a following following you, but you want some bullshit. So at 43, I see it. And the problem with these platforms are when I said it's more Black understanding now instead of Black consciousness, because I know that we got people on the ground putting in work. The problem that you have is those people that's putting in work, they don't have time to be doing videos or be on the camera. They doing work. And the people with these social media platforms, they not showcasing them. They not highlighting them. See, back in the day, I mean, my father used to send me to get newspaper. Boy, go get my goddamn newspaper. Go down into the corner. Yeah, I mean, you know, with a quarter, 50 cents or something, you get his newspaper. You take it back to him on the couch with his leg crossed, reading the newspaper. Because they read, that's how current events and stuff was translated through the newspapers and stuff like that, or word of mouth. We were proactive moving. Nowadays, and they didn't even, what I'm trying to say is they didn't have the social media mechanisms, but they still was able to get word all across the world. And I'm saying we got all the stuff now, and we on these social medias today arguing about religion, old history that's not been really beneficial to us now. We're not we're not showcasing the people.
That's right.
Like right now, right? I'm talking to you where you at. We talking to a brother all the way in London. Man, back in 1988 on the block, when I'm like 13 years old, I couldn't even fathom nothing like this. Like, this was a dream. I remember we would say, yo, I can't wait till they get phones where they can have pictures on it. You can see the person you talking to.
I remember that. I remember that.
Yeah, we used to dream it. So now it's actually here. Like we're actually so-called in the future. It's
right. That's right.
These social media platforms now. To me, we can have a way bigger following than Marcus Garvey, the Dr. Kings. I feel like, in my opinion, if they came back today, man, they probably wouldn't even talk to us. They would be very upset with us. When you look at Stokely Carmichael and the groups, the way that they moved and operated in the 60s without these media platforms, they would automatically say to us, especially some of the no-nonsense elders, what the fuck are y'all doing? You mean to tell me you can get a computer and talk to somebody in London and you ain't using it for the liberation of your people? Y'all arguing about what happened 8,000 years ago?
Right.
What's going on? This is the problem. And this is why I'm saying, I know we do have Black consciousness, but we got more people trying to find Black understanding than Black consciousness today, because the people that actually have these programs, we're not going around showcasing the people doing the work. So now it's being oversaturated with a bunch of ego. People coming on YouTube for money. They just throwing all shit out here and being led astray, bamboozled, hoodwinked by a bunch of bullshit. And it's too much egotistical shit. And for me, I don't have time for it because I don't have a temperament for it, number one. Number two, I'm old school. I'm super old school. I'm used to being on the ground. People think because now, okay, I got 500,000 subscribers and followers, man, I'm doing my work. No, motherfucker, you got to get your camera and get out on the street. So take those 500,000 subscribers that's watching you and go to where the groups are. Go into some youth development centers. Go into go show some of the Black excellence and try to bring them over to us. I mean, you know, start being more proactive. We're not doing this shit, and this is why I'm saying Black consciousness is sort of dead on a larger level. Because when I look at my father and my uncles and them, my uncle was part of the Black Panther chapter. He was a former gang member, and then they started No Gang War 74, and he was part of the Black Panthers. I had a step aunt that was part of the move that died in the fire. So I was always up on this power, and I seen them moving. No nonsense, no bullshit. You come in and say you can do something, you couldn't do it. After people vouch for you, man, something can happen to you. Like, they wasn't fucking playing back. I don't know what happened. It's like when they put a lot of our leaders in jail, when they declared war on Black intellectualism, Black intellectual meaning Black consciousness, Black national. That's the real Black intellectualism, not that bullshit of going to these Masonic colleges getting your degrees. I ain't talking about that shit. Because like Dr. John Henry Clark said, their education will never educate you enough to overtake them. It's not going to happen. But when you are teaching Black nationalism and trying to reinstore Black culture, war was declared on that. They put groups in jail for 40 and 50 and 100 years, ran them out of the country. So now my question I would have to ask is, after Dr. King was killed in 1968, his brother was killed the next year in 69. After different groups was ran out of the country, they put the Black Panthers in jail. The question that nobody ever asked, right? From about 1974 on forward, who was the Black Brain Trust or the political Black group that took power after the radical Christians were killed, like Medgar Evers? The radical Black Power movement was dissolved. Who came into power then? Because the mindset that we have today, the way we operate, we are thinking through that mindset that took place, that took power in the last 40 years. Because they did away with any thought of Black nationalism or Black power or even your radical Christians. That's died. Nobody ever answers the question, who came into power after the groups that we've been taught was really kicking up dust? Who are the groups? Who is the group now that was pushing the envelope?
Can I tell you?
Yeah.
There wasn't a group on that level that you mentioned because they were destroyed. A lot of people didn't know about COINTELPRO back then. This came out after the fact. So people were in a war that they didn't even know that they were in a war with. So they died a death predicated on that. After the Panthers were all basically completely disbanded by the early 1980s, and you had little community groups like the Mau Maus, the ones here in America, not the ones over in the original Mau Maus over in Kenya. You had many groups that died down. The Black Guerrilla Family. A lot of these movements became jail movements because that's where they were. So they became movements in jail now, which wasn't helping us on the ground and on the streets. So understanding what happened, how it took place, and understand that there were people that was paid to infiltrate these movements that look like us. I'm not going to say us. Everybody's not a brother because of his color to me, but people that look like us had infiltrated these groups. The point that I'm making is like Marcus Mosiah Garvey said. He said, "I will leave cubs in the bushes." Brother George Macon, we are the people that you're talking about who are going to rise up. It's about understanding in this time-space continuum called life that everything doesn't happen just at once. We don't get conscious. And now that we know something, the system changes. We come into power. There's a process in that. There's going to be casualties. People are going to die. Even more people are going to go to prison. It's going to seem like a purge, brother. And a lot of people are not ready for this. This is just the truth. This is not the sensationalized, glamorized answer. You know, when people ask, well, what's going to happen? Where are they now? There's many of them on the ground. Many of them are not in front of the camera, though. You know what I'm saying? So what's being sensationalized and what's being promoted amongst us, we kind of look at that as the end all be all or the totality of what's going on, as if we're not intelligent enough to have an underground. And an underground does exist. I'll just leave it at that. But I will also say this, that the hip hop community became a continuation, or the cubs in the bush, of the people who died off in the 60s. You had brother that were 60s, 70s, and late and early 80s. You know what I'm saying? What came out of that after Reaganomics, the influx of crack cocaine into the inner cities by the United States government, who brought them in from the Elipongo Air Force Base in Nicaragua after, you know what I'm saying, the CIA and Congress couldn't agree on something. So without the consent of Congress, started a covert war, and we were at the root of that. Not only had they destroyed our movements, killed off our leaders and ostracized its members, right? And had some even exiles. Some people got exiled and went back to Africa, like, you know what I'm saying? Pete O'Neill from the Black Panthers. You had others who got political asylum in Cuba, Sister Assata Shakur, thanks to the Black Liberation Army, who was underground, that helped to bring that into fruition. Who picked up the mantle, but not in the same way, but through inspiration and keeping our people knowledgeable about what was going on and that there wasn't opposition, was many of the people in the hip hop community, the rappers. That's right. So not only did they destroy our radical leadership by killing them off, ostracizing and neutralizing them in the 60s and 70s and early 80s, became time of the mid to the late 80s, you seen them do that again. They were because look, you had your public enemies. You know what I'm saying? You had your Lakim Shabazz. You had your people. You had Ice Cube. Even after he left NWA, niggas for life, niggas with attitudes. You know what I'm saying? He started, I want to kill Sam. Right. Death certificate. He was militant, and it was a message that was reverberating in the minds of the people, meaning our people were still ripe for a type of revolution. This is the height of the crack era, due to Reaganomics and the influx of crack cocaine in the inner cities at the hand of the United States government and with the help of the Italian mafia. This is real. It's not spookism. It's not mystery. That's another topic, but I'm just throwing that out there. And who picked it up? Not all the rappers, but most of the rappers, and had a message of inspiration, even though it was kind of b-boy. It was fun. You know what I'm saying? It was something to dance to. A lot of times there was a message behind the music. You know, and hold up. And not only that, the street element, the hood cat, they was hearing that. They was receptive of militant or conscious rap, opposed to like today. See, the music always reflects the condition of our people. Jazz, blues, it always defines an era and a certain condition that we found ourselves in, and our music reflected that. Now you see the music reflecting the condition that they use the music to infect us with the condition with hip hop in the music industry to a great extent, because they knew the biggest voice in the world. Hold up. First of all, I think it was the Oxford University determined, quote me on it, but look it up because I don't like to misquote things, but I believe it was either Oxford or was it Cambridge? I forget which one. But they had determined just a couple of years ago that hip hop was the most influential culture in the world, not in America, not in the UK, brother Rich, in the world. Yeah, so therefore, if people who was just making beats on the damn lockers and tables in school, because through Reaganomics, they took in the programs that were used to put things in the school, certain programs that was taken right back out. You know, our people had to use their creative forces and their voice. And still, even with that, out of what seemed like a bottomless vitality, we still continue to grow and to inspire and to influence the world. And because that right there, the opposition sees and knows the power of our own being sometimes better than we do, because we don't understand the power of the word and the power of how knowledge can offset spells, shackles, and generation-old conditioning. They had to make sure that they infected our music, and there was something called the Great Meeting. It was a meeting that took place between record execs and private prison institution owners, and they used that to offset the consciousness in our music. What is my point? We are the rebirth or the re-evolution, which is what the word revolution means, an evolution that is taking place again. We are evolving, and we are evolving again. This renaissance or this rebirth or this re-evolution that you see taking place, because there is radical revolutionaries in social media that only use that as a medium. And then you got a lot of nutcase guys with, they're not really conscious. Conscious doesn't mean that that you don't have cognitive dissonance. It doesn't mean that you're not undisciplined. It doesn't mean that you're proactive. It doesn't mean that you have integrity. It doesn't mean that you're dependable. But you do have those real ones with the voice that is on here, that is causing and sparking a re-evolution. A revolution is taking place once again, like how it took place through the music, but it's taking place again through the media, not through everyone. It gets confusing because there's a smorgasbord of goddamn information and teachers. Oh my God. Did you cut me off?
Now we can still hear you, you know, brother.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah, we can still hear you.
Okay, all right, because I got a call. I should have put my phone.
Yeah, you went
okay, hold on. All right, hold on.
Go on, George. You want to add something?
We're back?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I want to, yeah, I just want to.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I think I got to sign back in.
Yeah, you sideways. Yeah, I want to, want to kind of segue into the other half because I got about 30 minutes before I gotta go.
Okay.
I want to pose the question to Brother Sankofa because I know he's knowledgeable.
Okay, hold on, brother. I just want to, because I can't see y'all again. I want to make sure that I'm still being seen and that I'm here.
Yeah, not
I
yet.
got a call, so it kind of threw me off because I'm doing this on the phone. So just 1 second. I hate when this does that. You got to go through so much to get back in because I can't see you guys.
While you're sorting that out, big up to the chat room again.
Okay.
Yeah,
we're back. We're back.
You back on? That's all. You back. You back.
Oh
yeah, I want to. What I want to do. Yeah, what I want to do is what we talked about. When I observe black consciousness today, I sort of look at it like this. When I'm at the barbershop or just on my block on a summer day in the hood, you got black people with conservative ways of thinking, especially if you're in the barbershop on a Saturday. You got black people with radical ways of thinking, and you got black people with many ways of thinking. And this is why we argue in the barbershop. Like the barbershop is where you go and you lay it all out, and you argue over sports, you argue over politics. You got black people in the barbershop that come and say, I support Trump. You got somebody else in the chair like, nigga, you crazy. And we'll be getting to argue. So what I've learned was when I look back at Du Bois in his early teachings, and then you look back at where, to me, Du Bois was like the starter of basically the civil rights movement, and fighting for civil rights from a people that was never civil to you in the first place. I'm answering this question kind of long because I want to lay it out so Sankofa come in, he can build on it. And then when you look at Booker T was teaching black people to be self-sufficient, but don't worry about white racism and just work hard and maybe they'll accept you. Develop yourselves and over time they'll accept you. Where Marcus Garvey looked at all that shit and was like, man, fuck that. Black nationalism. Like, you know, white people was never gonna treat you fair or accept you. So when we lay out those three different thought processes, 100 years later, we are divided off of these different groups today. When you look at the so-called pro-black or the RBG movement, when you look at the black conservatives, and then you look at the black civil rights that feel like we built this country and it belongs to us, and like then like I said, you have your black conservative movements that want to forgive white people and the things they did. They feel like they just want to love everybody and be a part. Brother Sankofa, how do you view when you look at those three elders of that era, and then you look at it 100 years later today? How do you see that?
How I see that? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you
loud. Y'all can see me too?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So basically, that was a good analysis and point of ponderance that you laid out, Brother George, because there's nothing new under the sun. There's nothing new under the sun. So in our plight and our quest for liberation, there's always been different groups, categories, or, you know what I'm saying, organizations and movements that the people draw to or were divided along lines within. Okay. Now, I agree with Garvey. Garvey warned us. All right. He even had his gripes with Booker T and W.E.B. Du Bois at a time. It's just like what we would consider the conscious community of today, where you have your different types of conscious people or conscious type of characters. Like I went over before, how you have the different 6 types of different conscious characters in the community. Now you had your conservatives back then, you had your bourgeoisies, and you would have what would be called your radical nationalist militants, which would be Garvey. When we really study the philosophies and opinion of the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, we see that he left a template on what we ought to do and why. Most importantly, and why. In his philosophies and opinions, he also expounded upon what would take place for us 100 years from now, because you did mention 100 years, specifically the phrase 100 years, right? If we didn't apply the critical need for a united collective black front under pan-Africanism and under unity. You know what I'm saying? He had his enemies and he had his opposition. Some would say that there were government hands or puppet masters behind some of his boule or bourgeoisie opposition, which is much of the same situation now that we're seeing. There were things and aspects about the Tuskegee Institute that we could draw examples out of upon what to do with, because believe it or not, Booker T, even though a lot of real radical nationalists, don't really consider him when they consider, what I'm saying, our great leaders who were radical for liberation, for complete liberation, and what I'm saying, for our rise collectively, because he did have a movement going on, or something within his curriculum, whereas he brought, for we figured Africans had the land, we have the education. You see what I'm saying? Now, if we can educate the Africans and we could play that liaison, and we can have that unity between continental Africans and us in the diaspora, right? Because them having the land, us having other resources such as education, then we may be able to establish something along the lines of unity. You know what I'm saying? W.E.B. Du Bois, a person who is very intelligent, who wrote the first, I think, social study on any people, right? In this book called The Philadelphia Negro. And you are from Philadelphia, Brother George, right?
Yeah.
Very profound, very deep. And I'm connecting something to the point because I'm trying to look at the value and the good in some of the teachings that a lot of these brothers had, even though I'm a Garveyite. I rock with Garvey all the way. You know what I'm saying? And I see how us not applying the template that he left us, and he even warned 100 years from now, your conditions would be even more dire, and they are. You know what I'm saying? But I also wanted to, for some backdrop for people who may not know certain things about Booker T or W.E.B. Du Bois, or may know some things and be like, whoa, why would, there be a division if these brothers were so profound and intelligent and in tune with what was going on and what was needed? I don't get it. So that's the whole purpose of me laying a little bit of the backdrop. With the Philadelphia Negro, that was like the first study ever done of anybody, but we'll say black people. And I think it was 1890 in Philadelphia, with the area called the 7th Ward, I believe it is, in Philadelphia. And he talked a lot about Philadelphia. That was a template on the condition, socially speaking, of black people. So W.E.B. Du Bois did have definitely an understanding and an awareness and some knowledge that we could draw from and use. You know what I'm saying? The fact of what people consider him as the bourgeoisie type is because of, a lot of people who were educated and who did come from academia back in those days were cherry-picked leaders. They were hand-picked leaderships. You know what I'm saying? Him being once the head of the NAACP, who started in 1909, but which was controlled by a white Jew by the name of Jacob Schiff. You know what I'm saying? You didn't even see black people. They weren't even the leader of the NAACP. It was a damn white Jew at the top, and who was the leader. You might have had the black man who was the face, just like a black man is a face is on a cream of wheat box or a box of Uncle Ben's on a bottle of Aunt Jemima syrup, but they don't control it, was like what the NAACP was. And that's what Garvey's perception of it was. Okay, brother's intelligent, articulate, has a lot to offer as far as knowledge-wise, to educate the masses of our people. You know what I'm saying? But what Garvey wanted was something not that was theoretical and not something that was along the lines of integration, because after knowing and studying and dealing with our opposition or the enemy to our liberation or collective liberation and freedom as a people, he knew that separation was critically necessary, right? Because the war between the races, academically, politically, and otherwise, was imminent and inevitable, and that unless we developed our greatest resources, our greatest talents, our brightest, and we unify them based on the collective premise of what we have in common, that was our opposition as well, that integration was definitely taken off the table in the eyes of Garvey. Something that I definitely agree with, and something that I can see, because a lot of these so-called progressive bourgeoisie movements are still here. They're still here, even if they might go under different names. They're not all called the NAACP no more, and there is no Tuskegee Institute like that here no more. But the seeds have been planted, right? And the people who carried on, to our detriment to a great extent, the ideological tenets of a W.E.B. Du Bois or a Booker T, you still see pervasive right now in our communities, all right? But you don't see a strong presence of Garveyism, or even if you don't call yourself a Garveyite, by applying the template or broadening or adding to, because he didn't want you to just worship him. He said, I left cubs in the bushes. Marcus Garvey said, I left cubs in the bushes, meaning he expected us to take the baton to another level. But what happened was that was offset and that was undermined by the bourgeoisie class, their puppet masters, many of them who were in different Jewish organizations or different realms of the United States government, right? And then you had internal strife amongst us with Garvey. You know what I'm saying? The first black man who was ever hired to infiltrate a black organization or any organization from the United States FBI under the leadership of J. Edgar Hoover at the time, there was a black man that infiltrated the UNIA to offset, undermine, and to stop that which the Garvey movement was embarking on trying to accomplish. You see what I'm saying? They was more of a threat because they were building on self-sufficiency. The whole thing was being an independent nation within a nation, because he didn't say everybody needs to go back to Africa. He said some of you people are not worth anything here, and you wouldn't be worth anything or be a detriment to go over in Africa, bringing your Americanized, you know what I'm saying, indoctrinized and colonialized ways over there. So what he wanted to try to do, and what the government seen as a threat to them politically, economically, because we were under, I call it pseudo-citizenship. The 13th Amendment gave us pseudo-citizenship because we weren't treated as citizens. We were just called citizens on a stack of goddamn papers. But in reality, we weren't citizens. We were second-class citizens, or we were not even treated as citizens. You see what I'm saying? But a lot of people, based on this pseudo-citizenship, wanted to try to make and things work here in America. There is a level of understanding and agreement that I can have along the lines, certain lines with Garvey, with Du Bois, and with Du Bois and Booker T. Washington. You know, along the lines of that we need, because sometimes our people get so caught up in revolutionary nationalism that we become romantic, and that we forget that, like you just said, Brother George, earlier in the conversation, that we are married to this system, economically, politically, and otherwise. We have jobs in the system. We pay taxes to the system. We are in this system. So the undoing and the making or the building. Hold on, my phone's ringing again. Okay. Sorry about that. Am I still there?
Yeah, you're still.
I put my phone on airplane mode next time. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. I hate when this phone rings. So the breaking, the building, and the advancing of a united front that was going to be progressive has to be done in a non-romantic way. That's why Garvey built a movement and an organization that wasn't just theoretical. That's why he built something that was for us and by us. You know what I mean? He already foreseen and knew that it was impossible for us to ever have any kind of true equality in the system, okay, that was not designed with that in mind for us, the former slaves, okay, of the descendants of former slaves here in this country. So Garvey wanted to do something where it was going to benefit us and use our best, our brightest to do it. And he also seen that in the future, if we don't do this, we will be just where we're at right now on social media, still trying to put the pieces of the puzzles together and try to figure out what is our best moves that we should make in the approach in which we should do it. You see what I'm saying? Because of the bourgeoisie element, even though there are some things that I do agree with, practically speaking, not every tenet of his ideological premise, but with W.E.B. Du Bois. There's something I get out of when I read the souls of black folks. There's something I get out of when I read the Philadelphia Negro. There's something I get out of when I read a lot of his literature, his narratives, and his works that I say can be applicable for blacks here in America. Once we have a plebiscite or a referendum, or we sit down as a collective, right? And we determine what is best for us. There are things that I can see in his teachings and his ideological premise that we can implement that would work best for us, because we don't want to get so romantic. We think we're going to just get on Noah's Ark and go to hell back to Africa and just be accepted over there, just like that. We also have to understand that a brotherhood has to be made. The United States government already knows that. That's what the Brzezinski memorandum is there for, to offset and keep that from ever happening, to put that wedge in order. Okay, we also have the bourgeoisie class, and anybody who is very anti-pan-Africanism, you always have a lot of people, especially on social media nowadays, you know what I'm saying, who talks about how the Pan-African movement the Black Power movement is only theoretical, when it is the Black Power movement who has done more on the ground with many groups, whether it was the Panthers, us, Garvey, us, you know what I'm saying? I mean, the Garvey movement, the Panther movement, us. When I say us, I'm not talking about us, H.O.K, House of Consciousness, okay? I'm talking about us, United Slaves. Many other, the Mau Mau groups here, many of the Black African Pioneer movement, the Black Liberation Army, many people that were here, you know what I'm saying? That their premise and their movement really couldn't take shape, fold, and mold the way that it was, you know what I'm saying, blueprinted in the mind of Garvey, is because of a lot of different reasons. There is theoretical consciousness and there's proactive consciousness. There's a lot of romantic consciousness too. So what I mean by romantic consciousness is a lot of people will take bold, fiery words, speeches from a Garvey, from the Stokely Carmichael type, even from our beloved Reverend, who was a radical Christian, from the, what was the brother's name? Man. From the Black Noble Shrine of the Black Madonna. I forget the brother's name. That brother right there. You know what I'm saying? That was offset by the bourgeoisie movement. The bourgeoisie movement is still in many shapes and forms now. Because back in those days, brother George, you had the militant radical movement, which would be what the Garvey movement was. You had the bourgeoisie and you had the boule movements, right? But now within the boule and the bourgeoisie movements, you have subdivisions within those movements. They're not just as dry and cut this or that anymore. Now that you have, and what would be considered traditionally a militant or Black nationalist movement, you have the bourgeoisie element in that now. You have the bourgeoisie element in what would be considered a nationalist radical movement at one point. Because it is not just what is needed, separation, but to build a united global front, because we're going to need that. We're only 14% of the population here in America. We do have power here because we have, if you know, with the potential of group economics, we have power because according to the World Bank Atlas, we have a $1 trillion a year spending power. You see what I'm saying? But the bourgeoisie / integrationalists, okay, has permeated the Black Power nationalist movements. So there's many different ways to look at it, because everything's not just cut and dry now. It's not just the bourgeoisie movement over here and just the Black nationalist militant over here. It's a little bit mixed up and a little bit more complicated and crazier than it has ever been. So a lot of times it really boils down to people networking with people who are like minds, have like agendas and objectives, have shared values, and who basically in this journey want the same thing at the end of the tunnel. Other than that, we're going to have a smorgasbord of conscious people with a lot of information, on a lot of different things that don't really connect to anything that solves problems, that is solution oriented, whether on a minute or a macro level.
Yeah,
You
I
know
want
what
to
I'm
ask you
saying?
something. I
But
want to
the
ask you
fact
something real
that
quick.
the opposition to radical, and what I mean by radical doesn't mean you grab a damn gun, you know, with a dashiki on made in China and you go out in a blaze of glory like a jackass. That's not what radical means. Radical doesn't mean, you know what I'm saying, that you just pump your fist and you shout black power every day. Ungawa, black power. Ungawa, black power.
Mm.
Yeah, there's something that does for me. It raises up and sparks an energy in me that I love. But that's not what radical means. Radical comes from the Latin word radix, the root word radix, which means those whose concern is with social change, those who make their concern a change, right, on a
Mm.
social, political, economic level. That's what the word radical means. So a radical nationalist and one who wants to bring about a change long term, not temporary perks, not temporary, you know what I'm saying, handouts from a system that has no intention of giving you true equality, right? Not trying to build a nest egg long term in the system, only to do for them to do what they've been doing, which is to take, which is to conquer, which is to infiltrate, which is to undermine, which is to ultimately destroy. No, Garvey, which was a visionary, knew that what we were facing was critical as far as our success or our destruction as a people. That's why pan-Africanism was so important, because he knew that we're going to need resources. Man, the breadbasket of the planet Earth is in Africa, right?
Mm.
He knew that revolution movements were taking place in Africa, people fighting for their liberation, movements taking place right here in the Caribbeans, right?
Facts.
Were taking place. And the only way that we would have power, right? Because he didn't just look at it as a couple of handouts or some unity or some couple of educational grants like some bourgeoisies do here in America. And then after academia, we learn how to be more comfortable in America because we're just academically inclined. No, he wanted revolution, complete constructive change. He was a radical from the word radix. He wanted social change that would be long term, that would be enduring, that would be something that would empower the children, strengthen the bloodline, you know what I'm saying, and broaden our horizon as a collective as we move forward in an ever evolving and advancing world. So that's why I
Sankofa,
choose
yeah,
Garveyism and the template he left over anything else, which were only treating the symptoms and the problems of cultural and mental colonialism, but not healing, or without a plan of long-term healing and transition and elevating us out of the system of exploitation in which we're captive to. That is my premise on that. I mean, we can go so deep on that, and I would
yeah,
probably even like to tackle that
Good.
topic in a more formal manner where we deal with some information and maybe even do a little presentation and bring
yeah,
some of this dialogue to the forefront on a more layered level. You know what
yeah,
I'm saying? Because the
yeah,
topic is deep. So
because
in a deep
I wanted to
critical
I
say,
want,
topic
I
like
want the
that, it's
final
hard to
half an
just sum
hour,
it all
guys.
up with a simplified answer. We got to kind of, you know, address that in some tears, because that is a deep topic matter that is still pervasive amongst the so-called conscious communities now. The bourgeoisie element and the militant element and the divisiveness going on as a result.
yeah, I
Sankofa,
want, yeah,
George,
yeah, I'm
how
here.
long have we got until you guys got to leave? Are we on
I
the
gotta,
final half an hour
I,
now? Or are we wrapping
yeah,
it down?
I gotta leave at about 12:20, 12:25.
All right. All right. So from
I
there,
mean,
before
120,
we
about
go into the
120.
final build, then, and you ask your question, George, yeah, let me just
Yeah,
say big up to the chat room, big up to everyone who's been in, offering their comments. Shout out to Aliel, yeah, Vera. Shout out to all the people that are supporting Black Eyes TV. It's been a tidy build so far today with our brother Sankofa, with my personal good friend George Macon in the house, building also with us on the purpose of consciousness, theory and practical. And we've just been going through some of the real-time works, cultural appropriations, where we're weak, where we're strong, the manifestation of black cultural thought and acts and processes. So yeah, but we're wrapping it down now. But George wants to ask a question now. Go for it, George.
Yeah. I just want to
Hey,
say,
brother, pardon me. I didn't hear the question.
Yeah, yeah, we're asking it now, brother.
Okay, all right.
yeah, I want to say something first, and then I'll put the question out. Me living in Philadelphia, Philadelphia probably has the largest bootleg, or black bootleg groups here. You know,
That's where it started.
in Philadelphia, you know, December 4th, 1906, Henry Minton, him and a group of others, they created the Sigma Psi Phi, black fraternity. You know, it started here. Philadelphia was a place where a lot of the slaves came to be free, and Philadelphia at one time had the largest black population here. So yeah, you know, there was a lot. It was a lot of jobs and things. I might do a live stream on the history of blacks in Philadelphia and understand just how racist it actually became over time as we to fill the place up. But I need people to understand. I'll say this: I need people to understand just the dynamics of what happened to our people coming out of slavery. I want everybody that's watching now in the chat room. I want y'all to get a pen or put this in your phone and remember, research Field Order 15. Field Order 15 happened with us coming out of slavery, and with the after the war between the, what was it, the what war, not Revolutionary War, the war between the South and the North, what they was going to do with the X amount of million slaves. And when General Sherman had the meeting with the I guess it was 26 pastors, and they asked Pastor Garrison, what did they want? These black people knew what they wanted at the time. Now I'm going somewhere with this because I want y'all to understand our people. They knew what they wanted. You know, they asked for land. The land, a strip of 400,000 acres of land from a strip of South Carolina down to Florida, and they asked to be separate from whites. They did not want to live around whites. They wanted to build their own thing up where they could do, because they understood that they was living in a capitalist society, and they wanted to till the land and work the land and develop an economy where they can buy the land back and they could be self-sufficient. These were people. This was before any of these people that we're talking about now. These pastors in the South understood this, despite them, some of them not being able to read, despite so-called some of them not having a formal education. They understood that they was the cattle and they was the food. So now it was their turn. And under the Lincoln administration, it was okay and a bill was signed. But when Lincoln was killed, Johnson came through and extended that.
They give it right back.
Yeah, they throw them right back. So I'm saying that this, right? Now, this was 1865. So if you fast forward up into 1896, you have Du Bois being hired at the University of Penn, you know, as for a fellowship in psychology at the University of Pennsylvania. Now, one would have to ask the question, from 1865 up until 1896, how did that mindset change? Now, going Field Order 15, all the pastors agreed except for one pastor. And this pastor was not from the South. He was from the North. He was from Baltimore. And he had never been enslaved. He was educated by white folks, right? So now you begin to see the mindset of how it plays out in the hood. Most affluent black people call the people in the hood Pookies and Ray Rays today. All the Pookies and Ray Rays, or the blue collar people, they look down. But back then, you had the pastors that was enslaved in the South. They knew what they wanted, but then you had the educated Negroes. They figured that because I'm educated by these people, that we can actually have a pro-social society. And so now you have Du Bois graduating from Harvard and then being hired at the University of Pennsylvania. But one would ask the question, how was this man able to do all this without being compromised during these times? You get into Booker T. Washington, and you look at Booker T. Washington, and his white Americans view Washington's vision as a key to racial peace in the nations. This was doing white with the aid of white philanthropists such as Andrew Carnegie. Washington's Institute and its philanthropy of economics first and equal rights later thrive. Well, we already know that Andrew Carnegie was a staunch supporter of eugenics. and was a staunch, vicious racist. So a lot of our people basically believed in joining forces with the system that was already oppressing us. You know, whereas though I look at Garvey came later, because you got to understand Booker T. Washington died in 1915. And at the time when he died, segregation laws was in full swing. Blacks was hung in the South. He never really publicly spoke out against the evils of segregation or lynching or discrimination or none of these things. Now, the Boise did, but the Boise was part of the Boule group that was still funded by white folks that allowed them to have it in the first place. So one would have to ask the question, when Garvey come into play, Garvey witnessed all of these things, and Garvey began to have the thought process of, man, forget that. White folks is never going to see us as an equal or treat us, or shut the door. I'm sorry, y'all, my son again. White folks are never going to treat us as an equal, or so-called give us the opportunity to have any type of black economics. So he forced the thought process of black nationalism, do for self, independent of these people, where neither Du Bois or, now Du Bois changed his stance many times throughout his life, but I believe that the early Du Bois did a lot of damage. He did a lot of damage and the things that he did. But Garvey to me was the best, because Garvey got a chance to see Du Bois, who Du Bois started the New York chapter of the Boule to basically stop educated blacks from joining Garvey. And one would have to ask, who funded that? Who was behind? Who was the hidden hands behind that? You know, here's Garvey telling black people to rise up, think for yourself, do for self. Or with some of the things he learned from Booker T, but then he saw the mistakes that Booker T made, and he said, listen, he spoke out against the lynchings and things. I think it was the 1920 speech in New York, where he publicly spoke out against a bunch of things that Booker T would have never spoke out against, because he was financially funded by these white supremacists. So I'm saying all that to say, in today's time, as long as we're educated in these institutions and we're hired by these groups, you're going to always have the Booker T thought process, the conservatives, which was birthed out of the white progressive movement. So black conservatives and the Du Bois thinking that you're going to get civil rights from a people that was never civil to you. And then you have the black nationalism. The black nationalism is frowned upon by more black people than damn near white people, because we can't get past the program. So I'll rest on that, and SANKOFA.
All right, and I want to say this too, just in close, because a lot of these groups, like how you said, the reason why they persist and exist is because of the funding. You know, there's nobody's going to fund a radical black militant nationalist movement that is geared towards the political, economic, academic, intellectual advancement of their people. The system is not going to, or no other philanthropist groups are going to support that cause. Okay, so those causes do still exist because you have financiers and handlers behind a lot of these different groups, you know what I'm saying, that come in many forms, you know what I'm saying? That's why self-sufficiency and being independent, you know what I'm saying, allows you and affords you the freedom of choosing to create an organization for and by you, you know what I'm saying? An organization for and by you for your best interest and the collective interest of your people. I mean, you had people, because even going back before that, in the 1840s or 50s, I believe you had David Walker. I don't know if y'all familiar with David Walker. David Walker repeal. These are the proto-black nationalists that came even before Garvey, that were right here in America. You have Martin R. Delaney, who is known as the father of black nationalism, who was a former field marshal in the military. I think the first black field marshal in the United States Army, you know what I'm saying, as well as a physician, but also seen from being in the army and fighting on the side of this system that, you know, we're never going to have equality here. You know, our uphill battle is going to be a hard fight and battle to win. It's going to even seem impossible. However, we must separate, because if we don't separate, we will become eliminated. You know what I mean? He seen that, and as a physician, as an educator, as a field marshal, and as known as the father of black nationalism, who some may be unaware of, but look at and check out some of the literature that he wrote. Look at David Walker. The people out there listening, get a pen, take down the name David Walker, and look up some of the proto-nationalists to give you a template of what was going on. Are you to study that, to just look in the past and say, well, damn, well, that's what they did in the 1800s. That's what they got to do with now. No, it's knowing that, because a lot of the ideas and the concepts that derived and which developed into the need for separation and the need for Black nationalism, you know what I'm saying, to catapult us into advancement. That's the whole purpose of having Black nationalism, not just for feel-goodism. You can go back to church for that. You know what I'm saying? Oh, Albert Cleage, that was the name of the brother from the noble shrine of the Black Madonna out of Detroit, Michigan, who was the radical Christian, whose name I forgot. Albert Cleage. Sometimes the mind just work like that. The mental file cabinet will open up, and then, you know what I'm saying, the name would just pop back up. So I wanted to say that, because you know you don't feel right until you say it. But back to the whole point of the matter is this: you get an idea and a concept of what formed Black nationalism, why it formed in the first place, why it was necessary, and the power and the ability that it had, which made the system be in opposition to that, but financed the Boulets to the point where the Boulets would troll, what we call troll now, or would be in opposition to a movement that is specifically for the advancement, all right, of Black people, long term. You know what I'm saying? Not just a program that's going to hand out some scholarships so you can be educated and then feel comfortable because this system ain't that bad, because if they was, why would they have sponsored this? No, Garvey and even the people before him, you know what I'm saying? Look at the Black nationalist concept, and pan-Africanism was an ideology, you know what I'm saying, that went before Garvey. We do want to understand that, because some people think Garvey started this. And for the sake of history, and much respect to the elder Garvey, the beloved ancestor Garvey, rather, not elder, but ancestor, because he's made a transition very long time ago. You know, we say Ashe to his spirit, but we can't forget about the Pan-Africanist movement, or the first international Pan-African meeting that took place right out there in UK. Shout out to UK, okay? Right. Shout out to the UK, right out there where
African liberation.
Yeah, in 1899, the first Pan-African. So this wasn't something that some Blacks in America, which a lot of the bourgeoisie class and people try to stigmatize this as being some movement that was started by some Blacks in America seeking some kind of identity or some kind of acceptance, where you see that you had from Liberia. So you had the Mayflower of Liberia, which left New York Harbor 100 years before the Black Star Line ship attempted to. Whereas you had 80 slaves that left Manhattan, New York, right, in 1820, and set sail right to Africa, right to what is now called Liberia, in Monrovia. You see what I'm saying? You had throughout the 1800s. The 1800s produced a time, and we should study that, because that era produced a lot of liberation that we haven't seen since then. It's a shame. We had the Harriet Tubman that took place, the Underground Railroad, to the later part of the 1800s, but still in that century. You had the Haitian Revolution in 1804, which took place in August 1804. Shout out to Black August, Haitian Flag Day. You know what I'm saying? You had Nat Turner's revolt took place. Not only that, you had Chris Bookman from Haiti. You know what I'm saying? And Dessalines go on an expedition and that contributed to the liberation of many of the colonies under Spain in South America. Simon Bolivar, that's where the name Bolivia comes from, the Haitian Revolution. This was all that went and liberated what is now called Bolivia. All of these things took place in the 1800s. So you're getting the idea of what was taking place. Henry Sylvester Williams of England and other people who are pioneers and proto-Pan-Africanists, why they started this, the condition of our people. Look at the condition that we're at now. Look at what they warned us of, right? And said would take place and where we would be. Some of them even said 100 years from now, that's where we're at. And look what we're still talking about, because we didn't apply the template of Garvey and other proto-nationalists such as David Walker, You know what I'm saying? And many of Alexander Crumble and many of the other greats who came prior. We need to have not regurgitate information, but have a renaissance, a rebirth of the act of the proactiveness, right? And the commitment that these people put their lives and freedom on the line for the advancement of the people. Other than that, consciousness would be theoretical. It would be feel-goodism. It would be a step away. It would be a step above and away from church, but nonetheless, it will still be church, because you will feel good and you will feel right, but you will only be right where you're at. And in this world where we're at, we're a world where you better get right or we're gonna get left. Because in this journey that we're in, it requires some direction. So we ought to choose a side and we ought to stay there, because it's about to get really real. It's intensifying before, I can't say it's about to get real. It's getting real and realer by the day before our very eyes in real time and where we live. So after a social media bill, which is definitely necessary to edify the people, I want us to reconsider Garveyism in a proactive way, in a social, scientific, implemented way, not just in a theoretical way, so we can know how great we were. And we could say Ungawa Black Power, and we could wear that dashiki with pride, because all those things are great and all those things are good, but they're not good enough in light of what we're facing. We have the components of what we need, the biggest spending power. We have the artists, we have creators, we have people that know law, we have people that have been in the military. But if we don't, only thing we don't have, we have Black billionaires more than ever, more educated Black people than ever. Only thing that we don't have is principled unity. And because we don't have principled unity, we are sitting ducks. All right? We have no protection for the objective and the agenda that is inevitably lined up against us to our own detriment. Just look at what's going on in the world around us and consider what Garvey said in the philosophies and opinions of Marcus Garvey, and then reconsider Garvey in an implemented way and in a proactive and in an applicable way, opposed to being conscious in a sense of conscious ideologically, but we need to be conscious proactively. You know what I'm saying? Because if not, we are aiders and abettors and contributors to our own demise, especially those who know better but refuse to show better because they think this is a joke. This is about views and likes and about social acceptance and instant gratification. Nah, it's beyond that. I'm in this because I'm a soldier for the cause, brother. And if I die tonight, I'm dying. At least I died with that consciousness in my mind, with that zeal in my mind, and I've planted many seeds in other, and I feel like I was a great spoke in that wheel of change that is critically necessary and that is inevitable to come. You know what I'm saying? I think destiny itself is waiting on us. We're waiting for the future, but we ought to stop waiting for the future and create the future now, because destiny itself is waiting on our lazy asses as a collective people.
That being said, I gotta say peace to the chat, peace to the panel. The wife is calling.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Yeah, I gotta go serve.
You gotta answer that call.
Yeah, I gotta answer that call, right? And we gotta do this again. Hopefully we can do it later on this evening.
Yeah, later on tonight, we're all going to link up and we'll try and come back on and do another build. But big up, George. Go and deal with your business. I know SANKOFA is going to wrap it up in a minute as well because he's got some things to do. But for the people, then, yeah, we're going to be back on a bit later. So, yeah, big up for joining us, George. I'll speak to you soon.
Brother George, I want to say it was an honor and a privilege, man. And thank you for contributing. And I look forward to building with you later, my brother.
All right, brother. Peace.
Peace, love, and light.
That's so. Listen, you still there? Can you still hear me? SANKOFA?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, you went in right there, but again, just before we close out, give the people some final thoughts. Anything you really want to leave the people with just before we go. And again, people, we will be back. Like the video, share the video. SANKOFA is gonna be definitely coming back on to build some more, if not later on today, tomorrow, the next day. but very soon.
Definitely coming back. We're gonna be doing this often.
That's all. Yeah, let
brother,
the people
you see
know
me?
any final thoughts. Yeah, we can see you. You clear,
Okay.
brother.
All right. So basically, I want to thank everybody who tuned in for tuning in. I think that these topics and these dialogues more need to happen a lot more. You know, I think all topics are important, but I think we have to categorically consider the more critically important and relevant subject matters and really put them things on the table and dissect them, because it's getting serious out here, people, and we're losing. I believe we can win. I believe we will win. I believe winning is ultimately our destiny. But destiny itself is waiting for us to really pick up the mantle that the ancestors left for us, that the leaders left for us, that the teachers left for us, hell, that our own life experiences are leading us into in our own present life in real time. I think that it's time for us to really reconsider and consider some things. Excuse me. I keep getting these calls, and I am doing this on my phone, not at the laptop today. So it does keep cutting in and chiming in. I should have put my phone on airplane mode, but
Too good, brother. It's ruined
can
the
you
film.
still hear me?
Yeah, we can still hear you clearly, brother. Finish your
Okay. All right, bro, because y'all keep fading off on my end. So pardon that. So yeah. So in closing, I want to say me and the brother intend on covering more serious topic matter going forward. Um, the people, if you have any subject matters that you request that we ought to go into, definitely get in touch with the brother and make that suggestion, because we can talk about Kemet all day and all night and the next day, all we want. We can talk about what's more true, the Moorish doctrine or Kemet or the Hebrew Israelites. You know what I'm saying? And you know what? I'm open for all of it, because all of these are topics that are inevitably going to be held, and if it's geared towards the education of the minds of our people, then I'm for it. But I think we have to categorically consider what's more important and why. So what we want to start to try to do, on me representing Black News 102, Sarnetta TV, and the House of Consciousness, what I want to start doing is to contribute when I come on Black Ice TV to what I feel are more relevant, because of the times that we're in, the dark hour that we're in, and what we're facing right now as a people. Topics that are critical, more thought-provoking, and you know what I'm saying, are more audacious, because these are the things that we need to address in this time that we're in, because shit is real and it's only about to get a lot more realer. You know what I mean? And with that being said, I want to thank you, Brother Rich. And I want to shout out the whole UK for taking time out of your schedule to listen to your brother Sankofa. And I want to look forward to doing this more often. Not only do I look forward to coming on teaching, I want to be part of panels, and I also want to come on here and learn a lot, because it's about each one teach one. We all don't have all the answers. We all are like puzzles, and we all, as puzzles, have a piece that we should all fit in with in order to make the bigger picture complete. You know what I'm saying? So that's what my intention and my objective is. I do this for the love of the people. I don't do this for fanfare, and I don't do this for YouTube views and likes. You know what I'm saying? That's why you don't even see your brother like that in front of the camera. You know what I'm saying? So when you do see me come before the lens, I want to make sure that I address topic matters that are critically relevant, and that in some cases long overdue or should be more consistent. All right. So on that note, I got to head out and get ready to get my workout on. Got a little training to get into. You know what I'm saying? Like consciousness once again. You can say you're health conscious, right? That's theoretical. I'm conscious about nutrition, the body, how the body works, how the body reacts to tension, but it doesn't mean anything if I don't apply it. Now, conscious application of it is where you can see I'm 44 years old, but I'm stronger than I've ever been in my life, mentally, physically, and spiritually. But the physical part comes from not only being conscious of the physical dynamics of how the body works and how to get in shape, but applying that knowledge and bringing about the desired change. So that's the same thing with theoretical and practical in the flesh. You know what I'm saying? So I'm about to get less theoretical and practical on these pull-up bars, and I got to run a couple of miles and get myself prepared, because I got some things that I'm embarking on. All right. And I definitely look forward to building back with you, brother, and the people out there. I love y'all, and stay tuned. And one love. And we are what we're looking for. We are the Christ that we're looking for. We are the solution that we're looking for. We are the salvation that we're looking for. Our principal unity is that. So on that note, peace, love, and light.
That's all. That's all. Nice one, Sankofa. People, again, big up. Shout out to my brother Craig Samuels in the chat. We got to arrange that next show, brother, and go in again. Big up to everyone supporting Black Eyes T and Black Eyes TV7 and Black media in general. You know what time it is. It's all about the black thought. It's all about the black movement, yeah? All black everything. That's how we deal with it on Black Eyes TV7. Look out for us later on today. We should be on either back on Black Eyes TV7, maybe on Jordan. We'll be on later building some more. So like, share, and subscribe the video. Peace, 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 family. Yeah, thank you for tuning in again. Peace.